And once again, we're live from the studio, and I'm your host, for what you see is what you get, and what you don't is better yet, John Arhitis. And of course, we're going to talk about the latest and greatest in Hudson County news, as we do here every week. So first of all, a hot topic, as many of you know, is the budget for the Jersey City Board of Education. Obviously, this is something that is an annual thing, like any other spending plan. But the Jersey City Board of Education obviously has had a lot of challenges related to, their own house, and of course the state, the city, and much more. I mean, it's hard to sum up in just a couple minutes, but the $814 million preliminary plan was approved last night narrowly by a 5-4 vote, and I'm fortunate to be sitting next to the Board of Education President Mussab Ali, so we're going to certainly have a long conversation about that today. I also want to let you guys know, if maybe you missed it earlier in the week, U.S. Senator Bob Menendez has moved his state office from Newark to Harborside in Jersey City. So certainly we're going to let you know how you can get in touch with the Senate office if you're trying to reach Senator Menendez, who again has now made a return to Hudson County. On top of that, we're also going to talk a little bit about the Bayonne School District. You guys may have heard by now that they plan to resume in-person learning on May 3rd. This is a decision, like with every district, that is a bit of a mixed bag. Some people love it, some people hate it, but nonetheless, we want to make sure you know what's going on over in the Peninsula City. And of course, we're also going to be speaking about the tragedy that befell Atlanta, Georgia, just on Tuesday night. Certainly, our thoughts and prayers are with the family and the victims. And we're going to talk about the local reactions in Jersey City and Hoboken. So all that and maybe even a little more, but first we're going to take a commercial break.
Burns Brothers Memorials, Monuments, and Markers, 787 Tunley Avenue, Jersey City. Hudson County's only monument maker, serving all faiths and cemeteries. Design, studio, and large inventory on site. Cemetery inscriptions and custom orders welcome. Burns Brothers Memorials, Monuments, and Markers, 787 Tunley Avenue, just south of Secaucus Road. Craftsmanship that will last for all eternity. Burns Brothers, Jersey City, Albert H. Hopper, North Arlington. Visit us on the net. Consumer Carpets, 3408 Kennedy Boulevard in the Jersey City Heights, your one-stop store for residential and commercial floor treatments, carpeting, linoleum, tiles, laminates, hardwood floors, area rugs, remnants, all major brands, all in stock. Free estimates, same-day installation. Consumer Carpets, it's savings, selection, installation. Credit cards and debit cards accepted. Financing available. Consumer Carpets, price to fit your budget, installation to fit your schedule. On the net at consumercarpets.com. Consumer Carpets, Jersey City, 201-792-2712.
Hudson County View live and uncut. John Arhitis, and as I just mentioned moments ago, I'm joined today by Jersey City Board of Education President Mussab Ali. Mussab, thanks so much for coming in.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Of course, you're welcome. So obviously we have a lot to talk about with last night, but before we get to that, I did just want to get your opinion on the teacher vaccinations in Jersey City. Obviously the rollout started on Monday. We heard some concerns and some frustration from some teachers over what happened over the weekend. And then, I heard from the JCEA president, Rod Greco, and he was obviously not happy with things were rolling out as of Tuesday. So I just wanted to see, do you believe the city's met expectations on their end thus far?
Yeah, I think the city's met expectations. I actually was at Ferris High School just this morning taking a look. And, I think the biggest thing the city's done for us is they've actually expanded hours. So it used to just be in the morning from 8 to 3, and now we're expanded all the way from it's noon until 8 p.m. So I think the city's really stepping up, and I think for us, we have both sites up and running in Ferris and PS 26. And this was something that was very important for us. Like, we wanted to make sure that our teachers had the opportunity to get vaccinated before coming back into schools.
So as of today, you're pretty optimistic that next month, April 22nd, the students will be able to return if that's their choice.
Yeah, so I went through a walkthrough today at PS5, and I also went to the vaccination site, and I'm very optimistic. I think we have a really good plan in place. I think that we've thought about a lot of the things that could go wrong, and I'm very optimistic that things are going to go right.
All right, excellent. So let's talk about that spending plan. Obviously, another long one. I mean, there's really no short Board of Ed meetings these days, as you're well aware. But nonetheless, I think the key takeaways are this. I mean, you were looking at about $827 million. It got down to $814. You were initially looking at a tax levy of $100, down to about $85. And it was looking at a tax increase of $11.86, and it's down to now $9.96, I believe. So, some noticeable changes there. And it took 5 votes, 5 amendments, which is obviously also not particularly common here. Yeah. So with all that said, I mean, how do you think you ended up here, and how do you feel about the product you have for this preliminary spending plan?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple things to keep in mind, right? So the first thing is, it's been a long time since we've had a budget that actually addresses the needs of our kids. right? I mean, the last time we had a budget that was considered adequate from the state level was when I was in 5th grade. And so it's been a long time since we've actually been able to give these kids a real shot. Whereas these kids in suburban districts, I mean, they've never had these problems. And this year in particular, that initial state spending plan is based on a non-pandemic year. I mean, this year you're talking about the trauma that comes in with these kids, all the technology needs. I mean, we're talking about, hotspots and internet for a lot of these kids that really don't have access. And so at this point, I think we really have to come to terms with the idea that one, locally, we've just been underfunding our students. And then, from the city side and from the state side, it's kind of been rough. I mean, the state this year during a pandemic cut $71 million from our budget. I mean, of course, we were anticipating state cuts from the S2 formula, but even the fact that during this pandemic, during this economic crisis, when the state received all these funds, they still went to Jersey City and took away $71 million. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to make up for that revenue, right? I mean, we're either going to be funding the schools or we're going to be laying teachers off. And at this point, we can't afford to do that. I think the pandemic has really showed how important schools are. And we're one of those safe spaces. We're asked to do a lot for our kids. Not just are we contributing towards education, we're contributing towards that sort of mental stability. We're contributing towards food insecurity. We're contributing towards providing all the wraparound services for our kids. So ultimately, the superintendent's plan at this point was we put forward an $85 million budget. We don't have anticipated projections on the Joe Biden plan. Right? Yeah, on the $85 million on the tax levy, right? But we don't have any projections at this point on what's going to happen with Joe Biden's rescue money. So the city was able to receive sort of allocation around $140 million. At this point, we don't have any numbers, and unfortunately, we're up against the clock, and we have to pass a budget. So the chance that we took is we said, look, we're going to put forward this budget with this tax levy at this point. As additional funds come in, if we're able to allocate them to meet some of our needs in the short term and the long term, we're going to allocate them. But we're not going to put our kids in a position where they're not going to have funds for their schools.
You don't want to put the cart before the horse. Totally
Right.
get that. But let's talk about perhaps partnering with the city. I mean, one person who called into the meeting was Councilman at Large Rolando Navarro. And he talked about, basically a joint effort, a concerted effort between the council and the Board of Ed to work together on finding some spending. I know they tried to do this a couple years ago. Obviously didn't go as a lot of people would have hoped. But what do you think about this time around? I know you expressed some interest in that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely interested. I mean, the problem is, I think that the city doesn't necessarily understand our spending issue because it's not actually a spending issue. It's not an issue on the expenditure side. It's an issue on the revenue side. We literally just do not have enough funds. And so when you look at it fundamentally, right, the fundamental burden falls from the state side initially. So when Chris Christie first came into office, he put in this 2% cap. And he said you could only raise taxes 2% of your local levy. Our levy at the time was around $80 million, okay? Our budget's around $600 million. Let's assume your budget goes up by 2% every year. On a traditional education budget, it goes up more than that, right? But let's just say 2% for the sake of argument.
Sure.
So that means on a $600 million budget, our costs increased $12 million every year, and the maximum we could raise in our levy was $1.6 million. I mean, that's a $10 million problem that kept happening every single year until 2018 when they changed the School Funding Reform Act. And then they said, all those 10 years that you didn't raise all this money, well, okay, now go raise $400 million in 3 years, right? I mean, it's like mission impossible here, right? Like,
It certainly sounds like a heavy lift, Mr. Board President, but we do got to take a quick break. Just a quick word from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Newport, the luxury waterfront community on the Hudson River, offers the quality of life you deserve in 10 high-rise rental towers with amenities such as the on-site Newport Path subway, light rail and ferry service, Newport Town Square, 3 playgrounds, dog run, upscale restaurants, retail giants like Sears, JCPenney, Macy's, and Target. Morton Williams Supermarket is just outside your front door. A health and fitness club, spa, skating rink, and medical facilities are also on site. NewportNJ.com. Enjoy the New York skyline from Newport Town Square. Manhattan is just one path stop away or quick ride through the Holland Tunnel. Nursery and private elementary schools all on site. 12-screen movie theater at the Newport Center Mall. Want to visit Newport? Stay at the Westin or Marriott Hotel. Go to NewportNJ.com for details. Newport has luxurious towers, great restaurants, shopping, New York skyline views, schools, playgrounds, a marina and yacht club, gym, spa, fine wine, fine living. It's incredible. It's you. NewportNJ.com. Newport, live like you want.
cutting edge. Surgical care is right here in Secaucus.
Robotic surgery is safer.
Shorter hospital stays.
Smaller abdominal incisions, the size of an M&M. Here at Hudson Regional, we provide world-class robotic surgical care.
Hudson County View, live on Uncut. John Arhitis, and I'm still with the Jersey City Board of Education President Mussab Ali. So, Mr. President, we were just talking about, the challenges of what's happened over the past decade, and I know you have your ongoing lawsuit against the state. Who knows when that's going to see a resolution? Probably not anytime soon, based on the way things go in court, especially during the pandemic. But I know you were in the middle of a point there. So
yeah, I just want to say again, the state kind of for a whole decade did not allow us to raise funds, and then has suddenly put this enormous burden on Jersey City to say, look, we're going to cut, tremendous amounts of money from you each year. I mean, last year, the 50 million, this year an additional 71 million, and we really have no recourse. I mean, the payroll tax at this point, the city at this point is only certifying 65 million, and hypothetically, based on the state legislation, they should be able to fulfill up to 157 million, right? That's the total loss that we've had. I mean, I'm not saying that the city can come up with 157 million. I mean, no one expects that. But at the end of the day, this was the recourse that they gave us. They said, listen, as we cut this funding, you'll be able to get payroll tax money and you'll be able to get your local tax levy. But, it hasn't worked out. Understood.
Now, as you mentioned, or at least alluded to, like in the past 2 years, we've seen the budget go up by about roughly $120 million. Obviously, that's a lot of money, and the budget as a whole is approaching $1 billion. So where are those funds coming from? Like, how exactly have you guys been going about, just finding new expenditures, finding new revenues?
Yeah, so the biggest revenues, obviously, the first thing is the local tax levy, right? And I think that's the most sustainable way. We've been fortunate this year, to get additional funds from the CARES money, as well as, funds from schools being closed. I mean, quite frankly, in this budget this year, you see $45 million that was essentially, surplus funds from our schools being closed for 3 marking periods. Obviously, we wanted schools to reopen as soon as possible, but, while they were closed, there was money that, we were able to save. And so that money is reflected in this year's budget, but obviously it won't be there next year. And so the question becomes next year, how do you fund that budget? I think the other thing is, we've been really looking to partner with the city to see how the city is going to allocate funds. Initially in January, we had a meeting with the City Hall and we asked them about tax abatement revenue. This was something that the mayor had originally brought up the previous year. And at that point in January, the city was not moving. The city said they weren't going to give us anything in tax abatement dollars.
And that hasn't changed at this moment in time?
At this moment in time, there's no money coming from tax abatement dollars. Again, I think the city, we've asked for them to allocate additional funds towards the schools because look, ultimately, when it comes to the burden on the taxpayers, I think that's a city's responsibility, right? If the city wants to reduce the impact on the taxpayer, the city can allocate more funds towards the schools. I mean, look, we have to fund necessities. Our textbooks, this is the first time we're investing in textbooks in 10 years. We have textbooks that are old, we have kids without textbooks. I mean, that's a necessity. I mean, how do you operate a school system without having textbooks that are, in kids' hands? Meanwhile, I think the city has certain projects that they could probably put on hold to allocate additional funds, especially during this time.
Yeah, I noticed last night on that point, you obviously took umbrage with what the city spokeswoman said earlier this week, saying that this was past practices, wasteful spending by the board that's led them to this predicament. So could you just reiterate why you felt that was, not correct messaging, accurate messaging?
Yeah, I just think the city, again, just doesn't understand school funding. I think that they, either they're willfully ignorant or they're just, unable to understand, the gravity of the situation. We're talking about funds that need to come in for nurses. We're talking about funds that need to come in for social workers, for guidance counselors. I look in our budget and I don't see any wasteful dollars. I mean, we're talking about really just allocating dollars towards the bare necessities of our kids. This is not even a budget where I can even say confidently, even with all the spending that we put into it, we can compete with, kids in districts like Milburn or kids in district like Chatham. I mean, we're not able to do that. We're not able to provide that for our kids. But just to provide the bare necessities, right? I mean, that's the budget that we put forward. And for City Hall to say, the school should not have a tax increase at all, I mean, it's ridiculous, right? Like for someone to say, you should be denying kids laptops, denying kids textbooks during this pandemic as they're going to be coming back, and to call that a wasteful practice, I think that just shows, a misunderstanding of, how important our schools are and what our schools need.
There were some of your colleagues, though, that at least somewhat agreed with that sentiment. I mean, they said, given the pandemic, given people need state aid, federal aid, just to make it from paycheck to paycheck, maybe people legitimately can't afford this. And of course, you're in a rock and a hard place. I know it's not easy, but I mean, what do you think of that kind of perspective that we saw last night?
So I think everyone on the board actually really expressed the idea that they want to support a fully funded budget. And they wanted to express that all the investments were important. I think many of them were concerned about, the tax levy versus the grant funding. Because again, the thing that's difficult for us is we cannot project funding that we don't currently have. And I wasn't going to sit there and pretend like we knew these dollars were going to come in and we know the restrictions on them. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we don't. Right? I mean, I don't know how much money Joe Biden's plan is going to give us. We don't know if those funds are going to be restricted. We don't know how many years we can use them for. And so ultimately, the plan was, look, let's put forward the budget, pass it like this, and then as additional monies come in, we can see what happens with the tax levy. Because ultimately, look, that tax levy number can go down. It's up to the city, and it's up to, the sort of allocations we get from the state that can move that number.
Thank you very much, Mussab. Thanks for coming in. Excellent timing the day after the preliminary vote.
Yeah.
Best of luck. It sounds like you're going to need it. Looks like you guys got your hands full, but I know you can handle it. So thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching. We're not done yet. We're going to take a break from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Good Friend Self-Storage in North Bergen, New Jersey is a fully climate-controlled facility equipped with state-of-the-art security, packing supplies, a Refer a Friend program, and multiple loading docks convenient for commercial use. Located just off of Route 3 at 4301 Tunnelly Avenue, Route 1 and 9. Call 201-867-2444 or visit us on the web today. Good Friend Self-Storage. Let us be your good friend.
Hudson County View, live at Uncut, John R. Highness. So as I said at the top of the program, I did want to talk about the local angle of these horrific killings in Atlanta, Georgia from Tuesday evening. So as you guys, I'm sure, have read by now, Robert Aaron Long, 21, is the suspect in 3 separate shootings at Atlanta area spas, and 6 of these victims were of Asian descent. Authorities haven't made any ruling on whether or not this is a hate crime. He has apparently already told law enforcement that this was due to his sex addiction, quote unquote, and this didn't have anything to do with the race of the people he targeted. But nonetheless, this has prompted some local reactions already. And I heard yesterday from Jersey City Councilman Rolando Lavarro and James Solomon, and they said next week they're going to be putting up a resolution, which they actually drafted prior to this event, that will condemn all sorts of racism and hatred against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. So let me just show you a little bit about what they said. So what I heard from Councilman Solomon in this joint statement, he said, Jersey City is not immune from the rising tide of hatred directed at our Asian American and Pacific Islander neighbors. Our message to them is clear. We stand with you. We condemn this bigotry. We will utilize every resource at our disposal to protect you and your families. So on top of that, Lavarro, who of course is of Asian descent, said, my heart, prayers, and tears are with the Georgians as they cope with this horrific tragedy, especially Atlanta's Asian community. As an Asian American, I share the fear, anxiety, and anger that Asians all over the country are feeling in the wake of this massacre, and raise my fist in rage and solidarity with you. So another person in the local area that is of dissent, another elected leader, Ravi Bala, said something last night. He put out a lengthy statement that we were able to get to this morning. And he said, just this week, though not an isolated incident, I'm heartbroken at the senseless acts of violence that sadly took the lives of 6 Asian American women in Georgia. These horrific acts come at a time when Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have been subject to racism, discrimination, and xenophobia that has absolutely no place in our society. So, some fairly strong-worded things from the mayor, and he wasn't quite done. He said, "Let me be clear. We at Hoboken condemn these abhorrent events and racism in all forms. Not only must we as citizens and leaders openly condemn these actions, but also reaffirm our commitment to anti-racism and to truly acknowledge the enormous pain and suffering that Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and other historically marginalized communities experience daily." And one kind of unexpected twist on this whole story is that you may have seen a clip that was really went viral on Twitter yesterday, and that was the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office Captain Jay Baker. He said at a press conference yesterday that Long may have frequented some of the spas, and he stated that this particular suspect was fed up and at the end of his rope, and yesterday was a really bad day for him, and this is what he did. Obviously, a lot of people felt like that was way too apologetic, particularly on Twitter, and they were certainly letting the sheriff's department have it. So, if we hear anything more, any other local reactions, we're certainly going to keep you up to speed. And we're just going to switch gears right into something completely unrelated. I actually just saw this morning, and it's another really tough story, but this one's right here on the home front. We heard from a mother. Her name is Dolores Gibson, and she's pleading to the community at large, to the public, which of course includes you watching at home. She's looking for help, anything that will help this cold case from 2015, where her son, Darcel Rivers, who was just 35 years old, was gunned down in Jersey City. And, when you look at what she said, again, it really is just heartbreaking. She said it was June 2nd, 2015, at the Boys and Girls Club of Hoboken, where I am director. We had all dressed in orange in recognition of Gun Violence Awareness Days. 2 days later, my son, Darcel Rivers, was shot to death. That speaks volumes. Really just crushing to see, just crushing to hear. She continued that Darcel was a big clown. That was my clown, the way he would make me laugh. He was a good person, and he loved to be around kids. He also wanted to be a chef, and that was one of his dreams he accomplished before he was taken from us. He did it, and I am always going to be proud of him. And, interestingly, he was visiting Jersey City from Rhode Island, where he was in culinary school when he was shot and killed, and it was just a few steps from his mother's home. Just really, again, just a horrific set of circumstances. And she continues that he used to be the first one of my kids to call me on my birthday and on Mother's Day. He would always have to be the first to call at 4:30 a.m. He said, "I am the one that made you a mother, so I got to be the first one to call you," and that was one of his traditions every year. I want to tell whoever did this, you took a very beloved father away from his kids. He enjoyed life. He would never take a life. The person who did this, how does this sit on your conscience? And, sadly, Rivers was actually a father of four that, were survived in light of his tragic death here. And anyone who may have any information is urged to contact the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office Homicide Unit. And you could contact them at 201-915-1345. And you could also leave a tip anonymously at Hudson County Prosecutor's Office, nj.org/homicide-tip. And of course, like with any other active investigation, even though this is a cold case, all tips will still be kept confidential. So with that, we're just going to take one more quick break. We'll be right back to close out the show.
Pan & Pinto Properties, Jersey City. Shaping the workplace with state-of-the-art office spaces that address your company desires. Building residences that define your home environment. Adjacent to all modes of transportation with on-site parking available. The right address, the right lease. Call 201-521-9000 or visit online at panandpintoproperties.com. Pan & Pinto Properties, building Jersey City for everyone.
Stevens Jersey City Ford, located right off of NJ 440 North. Across the Hudson Mall is your one-stop for all your automotive needs. Check out Ford's latest models like the 2020 Ford Fusion with its stylish looks and hybrid options, or the unparalleled high-performance 2020 Ford Mustang. The 2020 Ford F-150 Raptor is ready for those rugged off-road terrains with trail control. Need a mid-sized truck for your towing and hauling? The 2020 Ford Ranger will deliver. The 2020 Ford Escape is a luxury SUV that was made for comfort and adventure on the go. Returning is Ford's legendary Bronco, which takes you back to the true meaning of off-roading. They are now available for pre-order in our showroom or on our website. Let us help you find your next vehicle. Stevens, Jersey City Ford, 201-432-7272.
At Hudson Regional Hospital, we promise to be prepared for your emergency.
We promise to provide world-class robotic surgical care.
We promise to treat you like family.
To provide accurate diagnostic care.
To provide the most innovative orthopedic care at your doorsteps.
We promise to treat your baby like our own.
To never stop investing in the best of spinal care.
To be with you every step of the way.
Here at Hudson Regional Hospital, we promise to take care of our community.
Hudson County View live at Uncut, John Arhitis. So just a couple more before we call it a day here. First of all, a lot of people had some interesting reactions offline to this one. Former Jersey City Board of Education President Sudhan Thomas, who at one point also served as the acting executive director of the Jersey City Employment and Training Program, has pleaded not guilty in his case with the Attorney General's office. For those of you that haven't been keeping track or perhaps just need a refresher, that case alleges that Thomas, back a couple years ago, solicited $35,000 in cash bribes from a cooperating witness who has since been identified as Matt O'Donnell, a prominent attorney. And he's pleaded not guilty, but the big development out of this hearing is that he has been offered a plea deal from the state, though it is certainly not a very cushy deal, I think is safe to say. This was in front of Morris County Superior Court Judge Stephen Taylor, who was handling this case. You guys might remember that just before Christmas in 2019, New Jersey Attorney General Gubir Graywal announced that 5 current and former public officials had been accused of accepting bribes. So in this specific instance, Thomas, who faced a 4-count indictment, has this following offer to consider. It would be, in exchange for his guilty plea to second-degree official misconduct, the state would recommend 5 years at state prison, without the possibility of parole. Furthermore, he'd forfeit $10,000 worth of illicit proceeds, face a lifetime ban on public employment, and forfeit his pension. So obviously that's a tough deal to swallow. But this is obviously some pretty serious allegations. If you may need a refresher, the allegations in the original criminal complaint back from 2019 also indicated that he was seeking these alleged bribes, in order to prepare for a 2021 Jersey City Council run. And it also said in exchange, O'Donnell would become some sort of counsel for the Board of Education while Sudhan was still serving as board president. So for now, these are all just allegations. We will see what comes out in court. When we see the latest development, I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to tell you here first. And finally, I just wanted to also remind anyone, or perhaps inform for the first time, I mean, it just happened yesterday, that the New Jersey Assembly Community Development and Affairs Committee cleared Assemblywoman Angela McKnight's Civilian Complaint Review Board bill yesterday. It was a vote of 4 yeses and 1 abstention. And basically, this allows all local municipalities in New Jersey to review police operations and misconduct through a civilian board, and it appropriates $800,000 to the New Jersey Attorney General to fund these boards to do a training course for the board members to participate in the necessary training course before these boards are able to take shape. So with that, I just want to say thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.